what I'd say is that advice from people like Claire, I think, is actually extremely important, because we as the installers, it doesn't do any harm to have a check against what our activities are, and occasionally Claire comes and audits our real or rec, so we're very comfortable working with the independent consultants. My talk to you is mainly supposed to be about field or agricultural PV. Our speakers from the domestic haven't managed to make today, so I may touch briefly on domestic, but I don't have any materials prepared for that. Farming in the UK, this is my family's farm up in the Highlands, in Drumnadrochit, so I feel quite close to it. And I often ask them, why do you do it? This one is mainly a riding stables, but we know how difficult it is for the farming community. But when it goes well, it can be great, but I don't need to dwell on this yet. Renewable energy. I want to try and change the perspective a little bit here. It's your land. It has significant renewable energy resources passing over it, through it, onto it. It's yours. There's a lot of people out there who want it, and a lot of people have given up for good deals. In the past, some farmers have got very bad deals on the energy that they get. They get a very modest ground rental. But it is yours. You can fund it. You can get this. You have the assets to develop it. So rethink it from your perspective. Get this to work. Imagine annual cash crop. Think of this as a crop now. It's not renewable energy, it's crop. You're using your land, your acreage of land. You've got gate price stability now for the next 20 years. It's actually going to rise with the RPI. But there is a yield decline. It takes itself to market, self-exporting, and so you just let it harvest itself whilst you read the journal. Once planted, there's little maintenance, there's no inputs, there's no pollution, and there's little paperwork. So no tedious passports to deal with. We are in Grampian. We're not in the Bahamas, so we have to live within the resources that we have. We can produce between 850 to 900 kilowatt hours per meter square on your land. You're looking at 350 kilowatt peak per acre. That's 3,500 megawatt hours per annum on that acreage. And it can give you an income of 20 to 24,000 per year. But if you're more money, you get a lot more. So if you think now the acreage of your land and compare that to wheat and barley, it's maybe a better harvest. Should be good enough. And the payback is typically 8 to 10 years. And the advantage here is you can use this crappy piece of land that you've got. My friends, my family were looking at the back end of the hill, which is covered in fern. It's completely useless, but we could be getting this sort of revenue from that, and we're developing a proposal there now. Here's a case study on your farm buildings. This is a chicken farm. The size of this installation was limited by the grid. If we wanted to go bigger, we would have to incur costs upgrading the grid. A chicken farm is very energy intensive, and that energy demand rises during the day when the sun is rising. So you're using most of the energy on site. So the total benefit here, you're looking at about just short of £5,000 per year on that shed. Remember, that's a benefit because you're saving energy costs as well as getting that feed-in tariff and export tariff income. And you typically 5 to 6 years. You don't need planning. So permitted development. This is another case study nearby. This is a small holding. This chap's got a small cottage on about 6 acres of land, 7 acres of land, and it ties into his house, so he gets the best feed-in tariff. He'll produce about 40,000 kilowatt hours a year, and the net benefit to him is around 7,400. Most of that benefit is income, not energy savings, because his house is very small. This did require planning permission, but the planning was relatively swift, and there was one objection to the planning application, saying the wind turbine was in the wrong place. So that's kind of the bullishness that we get. So what you're looking for is a good southerly aspect if you can. Avoid shade from trees and buildings, and you're also looking at the grid connection. We're looking at this hillside here on my friend's farm up in Highlands, and although it's not south, it's completely using this land, and we reckon we can get quite a substantial yield on here. And there is already a barcode going right across here, and we've got way leaf all the way down to the kilo. So it's a relatively straightforward, but no one would have thought to do PV, and you certainly couldn't do wind because of the locality. Projects do require planning permission, and Aberdeenshire, all the councils really are very pro-renewable energy. They try to find a reason to give you planning rather than object, but it doesn't always seem like that. It's easier, there's no objections from MOD, and there's no objections from NAPS, because there's nothing it can do to interfere with any of the radar systems. So there are very few grounds for objections. They will develop in time, cumulative impact, visual impact will arise, so you want to get in ahead of the game rather than behind the game. There's no issues with wildlife, or bats, birds, and depending on how you do it, you can still use the land, possibly for grazing. Planning again is much faster, looking at 3 to 6 months rather than 12 to 18 months for wind. There's no heavy lifting, so we don't need to build any special roads or access paths. However, we're renowned for short-term measures in this country. I did a version of this speech in 2010. The feed-in tariffs at that time were 43 pence per kilowatt hour. They're now down to less than a third of that, about 15. And the next derogation in June will likely see that come down. So there is a high degree of instability in these measures in this country. The feed-in tariffs are a market stimulation measure. To stimulate the market, they will disappear in time. They're slowly reducing. So you may only have a 2 to 3 year window of opportunity, but once the contract is in place, the revenues are guaranteed for 20 years. They can't reside on that contract, but new projects are unlikely to qualify. When I look around the farming industry and I see that the average age of the farmer now is late 50s, and certainly with Duncan up in the Highlands, we're not talking about farming now, we're talking about retirement plans and passing on a succession. So given the average age of the farmer and who wants to be planting barley at 70, you're asset rich in land, you can retire and sell some of your land. If you're planning to retire and sell the land or you pass on to family, think about the annuity returns you get from your investments each year. You're looking at 5%. If you're lucky from the financial markets. If you plant solar PV, you're looking at returns of 11 to 14%, depending on the capital cost of the setup. So if you're at that age where you're starting to think about retirement, rather than give up all your land, back some of it, sell some of it, invest in your pension, it's your income now. So that's it from Richard Irvin. Most of our business at the moment is mainly domestic. On a domestic scale, the feed-in tariffs will keep going until the end of June. A 4 kilowatt system, you're looking at a cost of about 6,500, and payback is about 8 to 9 years. What I would say is be careful. There's a lot of cowboy salesmen out there, as Claire alluded to. As a company, we will never ask you to sign a contract on your doorstep. Anyone who asks you to sign a contract on your doorstep will walk away. That's an immediate alert. Take your time, but don't take too long given this next change, and we don't know what the change in rates are going to be. So we can do that. We've just introduced the triangular shaped panels for all those hip roof and triangular roof sections, because these square panels are quite unsightly on when you get a triangular roof section. They're really an aesthetic game. If you're space limited, you get an increase in energy production, but if you're not space constrained, it's aesthetic. So you are paying for the aesthetics of these products rather than actual performance. The panel themselves will give the same yield as any of the other ones. We do have another panel now which is 20% efficient. That is probably the most efficient product in the world, and we're seeing constant changes in development. And as an industry, as a company, we'll keep bringing those initiatives to you. Solar thermal makes sense technically, but economically just now, until the RHI comes in, you're looking at payback for 20 years. You're saving about £80 to £100 a year on your heating costs for your hot water. It makes it very difficult to justify putting in solar thermal, but technically it does make a lot of sense, but economically, until the RHI comes in, it's hard to make a case. So we'll probably stop at that point and take any questions. At this point, I always encourage people to ask the most difficult questions or contentious, or sometimes what you think is a silly question, because sometimes they're the hardest. Okay, thank you.